with a number of amazing panelists. So again, the day is pretty packed. It's an incredible agenda, and we really hope that you're going to enjoy it. Now, thanks again to all of our partners that actually made this event possible. Thank you for hosting with us. Thank you for supporting us in this initiative. And thank you for actually helping us to run this exceptional event. So that being said, let's get the day 6 started. And we're going to start off again with a thought leadership session by David Lasher from Team 360. David, the floor is yours.
Hi, this is David Lasher at Keen 360, and I'm here to spend 20 minutes with you talking about how the pandemic made no-code a necessity in the life sciences. A little bit about me as by way of introduction. I've spent my career as on the PM, architect kind of track, helping organizations to understand what they can do with IT and then help them put in and make use of the IT that they might select. Been in the CRM space for a good 20 years now, made most of my career at IBM in their consulting organization, then left there in order to be on the other side of the table as a CIO in some private equity portfolio companies that were struggling with their IT. Subsequent to those experiences and prior to joining Keen 360, I served as CIO, COO, and Chief of Staff at Maryland's Department of Health, Maryland being my home state. As for Keen 360, we are a 50-person firm that is based in the U.S. and Guyana. Guyana is next door to Venezuela in South America, but is actually English-speaking and Caribbean culture. We have about 50 persons, and we have both our no-code CRM practice that I lead and our BPO, business process outsourcing service line that our founder and my partner Zahid Khan runs. In life sciences and health services, we have maybe an interesting mix of experience. That's the basis for the point of view here this morning. And we work with some of the very largest pharma companies in the world, doing some BPO services for them after having implemented their CRM. We work with ventures that are moving out of clinical trials and launching their commercial teams. From my experience at Department of Health here in Maryland, we have a good deal of experience in the health services area, both public agencies and nonprofits. And for another view, we also participate in funds and help a venture capital firm that gives very early seed money to startups in biotech and med device in particular. So a couple of different perspectives that we bring to, and that I bring to this discussion. What is this discussion, this session? What I'm going to do is draw on our industry experience, my no-code experience in particular, and I'm going to draw on a report from Accenture from fall of 2020. It was an interview with 700 odd healthcare providers around the globe. I found the report as I was preparing for this session to have a lot of nice data and be making some points that I agree with. So let's hear from Accenture instead of just David. Right? What we're going to do is talk about how the pandemic has resulted in changes for patients and the providers delivering their healthcare, and then what the implications are and what this means for low code and why it makes low code, no code an imperative for organizations in this space. Commercial, and we're speaking here at Keen 360 mostly to commercial operations within life sciences. So this is from Accenture. Their report was called Reinventing Relevance. There's a URL down at the bottom. And where I thought we would start in an excerpt from this report is the finding that we all know that communications changed because of the pandemic. Right? We all are on Zoom. or Teams or Meet, and we're not having as many in-person interactions or meetings. What I found interesting about this particular graphic, and according to Accenture, whereas prior to pandemic, 2/3 of meetings between what I'm going to call med reps here, medical sales reps, 2/3 of the meetings prior to the pandemic were face-to-face. Afterwards, it switched. It became 2/3 were online or digital meetings. But that's not what this graphic is speaking to. It's speaking to the way that healthcare providers are saying on a forward basis, the way that they want to interact. And what's pretty interesting there is not expressing much desire in many more in-person meetings, but wanting or just in person. It's a blend. It's a hybrid of virtual or digital kind of interactions that we've all become used to, and the traditional in-person. So we need that mix is what the providers themselves are saying. And what they're saying they want in either kind of interaction that is different than pre-pandemic is that they're looking for more education. They're looking for more value-add assistance from their med reps and the companies that they represent. And interestingly, if you read across the bottom there for on the bars, they're looking for assistance, service. They're looking for their med reps not just to be dropping off samples and going through presentations, detailing, of course, for those in the industry. They want something more now. They're looking for new sources of value from the individuals that they interact with, from the companies that are providing methods, compounds, devices for patient care. So, and then these are some quotes, and I'm just going to speak to some of the points that stuck out to me. And the way the points here, the quotes here are arranged is that I've gone in the kind of traditional CRM model of marketing, sales, and service, and then finished with some specific points relevant to the med reps themselves that are in the field force, right? And again, these are the summary findings from the Accenture folks, the findings that resonated with me. And on marketing, the key is to make sure that the content that is outbound from your company is relevant. And this would seem to be obvious, but it is at the time of this survey. It was fall of 2020. I can share that Zahid, my partner, and I, we talk with a lot of individuals in this industry and a lot of providers, and we're finding that the relatively not relevant, in other words, spammy kind of communications are still far too frequent from the provider's perspective. So still a lot of work to be done on getting relevant content via the marketing channels to the providers. On sales, just like with marketing, what the providers are insisting upon is more relevance, more understanding of who I as a provider am, what I need to choose the right treatments for my patients might be. These are my words, but the providers seem to be wanting more of a partnership kind of relationship than a foremost commercial kind of relationship, as perhaps has been the case in the past. And what I find interesting and started observing in the last year or so, and endorsed by these survey results from Accenture, is the degree to which service is becoming something that the medical provider wants from the pharmaceutical med device biotech company. Right? It's not just literature and learning, it's assistance, as you can read here. And what this means for the field reps themselves, there's many implications, but for the field reps, the med reps, what the jobs need to evolve, to key off of a word we see here. And what needs to happen is that there needs to be more empowerment of the med rep to bring the right information to the providers that the med reps, are dealing with, because the med reps, are the ones who know the providers, um, all within the bounds of necessary compliance, of course. But also, and this is from Accenture, and I'll say that it's a point of view that we at Keen 360 have as well, is that the Accenture word is trust your field force to know how to use the tools appropriately and engage in relevant interactions. Trust but verify. We need to do, but we would agree with that to be effective with providers in the post-pandemic world, the knowledge workers that the med reps maybe have always been, but need to be even more so today, they need to be empowered with their tools, right? And so at the bottom in black, it all comes together. And this, the life sciences, pharma companies, they're moving in this direction. I doubt any of this is an epiphany to anybody who's listening, who has joined us. But what Accenture is urging, and what we Keen 360 are seeing as well, is that even though companies are beginning to make adjustments to these changes, this different world that we're in now, they really do need to move further and faster, as we see at the bottom here. So what's this slide, which as I look at it seems maybe excessively in Halloween colors, but we'll go with it. This slide is a model that, as you look through it, is really saying something that I had an aha on in the last 12 or 18 months, that what really needs to happen is that the med rep needs to become more like me, David Lasher. And what do I mean by that? I, of course, don't mean it literally. I mean, they need to become more like consultants. Right? They need to find the ways to be trusted advisors to the providers and the healthcare organizations that they're serving. Right? And what this means for the commercial ops team in the bottom bubble there in the middle is that it's no longer just about tracking reach and frequency and attainment for the field force. It's empowering them with the tools that they need to be the consultants, the knowledge workers that the providers are saying they demand as they respond to changes in patient care and the patient journey, as we would say, as most everybody would say. Some of the bullets up there in the right, what's interesting, what's imperative is that all these changes are ultimately driven by what patients need for better care, right? And some of the changes that maybe were already underway before the pandemic, certainly were, but were accelerated by the pandemic, are self-administered care. Not all the care being delivered in a medical office, a hospital office, a doctor's office. Tele-based care. I know from my background how effective tele-based care can be for behavioral health, right? But we're seeing more adoption of it, of this method of delivering care since the pandemic. And home-based care, right? Or in-place settings, community-based settings for delivering care. The doctor working with nurses who are going out to the patient's home, whether from the healthcare organization in which the provider works or from a community-based healthcare provider of one sort or another, maybe funded from a public agency. Home-based care, in-place kind of settings for the delivery of care, much more important as we're going forward. And that's an orchestrated process, right? And for the life sciences commercial ops team, if the providers and their organizations can't orchestrate all the processes, and they're saying that they can't, then the question is, how does the commercial op team empower the modern med rep to be a value-added member, and where appropriate, to help orchestrate the processes that are necessary for successful patient care, right? So that's kind of what the service side on the right there is indicating. And then on the left, going upstream, as you see in this in the slide, what really needs to happen is that the med rep, the field rep, needs to be working with the marketing team on the kind of messaging that goes out through the preferred channels and determining what the impact is. Not all of this can be determined from um, that which can be measured digitally. Right? There needs to be a human being in there. And so what this means is enabling the med rep to engage in some micro campaigns of pre-approved materials to make sure that when something lands in the inbox of a provider, it gets opened and appropriately considered and consumed, right? This can't just be a job of the marketing team going forward. It is something that the med rep needs to be empowered himself or herself to do. Empowered by whom? Empowered by the commercial ops team, of course, with IT being part of that. At the very bottom, what you can see is if the goal is to the goal of the change is to move from dropping samples and pushing product information to truly adding value, higher value add, and orchestrating teams that might include the patient and their loved ones, might include provider organizations other than that from which the doctor, him or herself, might be residing in, working for. This all says that what the med rep needs to become, the successful med rep of the near future, the immediate future, is the med rep that is functioning more as a consultant than has ever been the case in the past, and being empowered by their organization to function in that manner. So as we wrap up here, 1 or 2 more minutes, I'll take maybe 1 minute here to talk about the implications. So the Accelerate conference is all about helping organizations and individuals learn about no code. What I would encourage is that folks who don't yet really feel that they get the value proposition, what it is that makes no code both different and better, continue to learn. Because it is different than just cloud-based software like Salesforce on the one hand or a HubSpot on the other. It is a platform that allows your organization to have agility, to enjoy industry-specific products that have been built by companies like Keen 360 for the industries that we know. For example, Keen Life Sciences that you see here. The cost proposition can be considerably different than the behemoth platforms that dominate this market, life sciences market, for commercial operations today. And what we at Keen 360 love about these tools, and the reason we committed to, of many low-code, no-code platforms, we chose Creatio because of its BPM workflow engine, business process management engine. That's the secret sauce, the beating heart of this platform. And we believe that workflow is everything. And workflow, across orchestrated teams, right? Getting the user adoption, the system actually being easy to use and delivering value itself, but also allowing interactions across the many stakeholders that are engaged in the delivery of care to patients these days. And finally, organizational optimization, 2 big words with a lot of syllables. What that really means is allowing organizations to be able to deal with the uncertainties and unknowns of the future. This new model, if this is a generalized model, and you ask me, well, David, what does this mean? Can you provide the blueprint? I'd say I could provide some of the blueprint, but nobody really knows what the blueprint is going to be, the good blueprint is as yet. Everybody's figuring it out. And for that very reason, a platform that allows you to deal with uncertainties and adapt easily going forward is what is needed. I would argue, especially in this life sciences organization, because of the way it has changed over the pandemic. Let me wrap up by thanking folks who joined for taking 20 minutes with Creatio and me and my partners at Keen 360. We'd love to hear from you, talk with you more, help you on your learning journey for low code, and help you answer the question of how low code, no code can help you adapt to the changes that all of us are adapting to. Again, I submit especially in life sciences. Thank you very much. David Lasher from Keen 360. Bye-bye.
Wow, what a great session that was. Thank you very much, David. Very insightful and, as always, incredible. So next, right up, we've got a Fireside Chat hosted by Sam Biar, the founder of Technology Advisors, our great partner, as well as Terry Schiffer, a Senior Director, Sales Operations and Marketing at Onco360. Sam, Terry, thank you for joining. How are you today?
Good,
we're doing great.
Thank you.
All right, that's perfect. I'm gonna jump off from the session myself, but you guys having a wonderful time, and I will be back in about 20 minutes.
Thank you, Alex. So today I'm here with Terry, one of my longtime friends and customers, and we're going to talk a little bit about how she and Onco360 are using Creatio. So let's start out really quick. Terry, tell them a little bit about Onco360 and tell them about what you do for them.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sam. So my name is Terry Schiffer, and I am the Senior Director of Sales Operations and Marketing, as Sam said, for Onco360. I've been working in sales operations for specialty pharmacy since 2006, and I've known Sam since way back then, but I've been specifically at Onco360 since 2014. What Onco360 is we're a specialty pharmacy whose focus is on caring for cancer patients throughout their cancer journey. We dispense medications as a cancer patient is prescribed by their oncologist or hematologist. We're based out of Louisville, Kentucky, but we really have a sales team and an entire workforce that's located really throughout the entire U.S. So that's a little bit about who we are, Sam.
Great. Terry, for the audience, what Creatio solutions are you using today?
So we started using Creatio in February of 2018, and at that point we were using just the sales component. We've since added the marketing component, and just recently in the past few months, we've started building out the service component as well. So, we continue to evolve Creatio to work for us and to really enhance what we're doing within our company as a whole.
Well, I know we moved you to Creatio because of a bunch of problems you had with your old CRM. We won't say who that is, but everyone could probably guess at some point. And the first real issue you had was with security in the old CRM. Primarily, they did not have Windows authentication in the cloud, nor did they have single sign-on capabilities. Can you explain why that is so important, security for Onco?
Absolutely. So single sign-on is really important for us for a variety of reasons. But first and foremost is, as a pharmacy, we have a lot of rules and regulations we need to follow for being HIPAA compliant and to protecting patient information. And so having a system that allows us access to Active Directory to control is really important for us from an IT perspective. So, that single sign-on allows us to have control over who has access to our system, what they're accessing. It gives us tighter controls around password compliance and character requirements, when and how often our passwords need to be updated, and all that stuff. Again, just because of the industry we're in, it's incredibly important for us. And then you look at it, Sam, from an end user perspective. To manage a lot of systems and a lot of different usernames and passwords, it can be really cumbersome. And so for our reps, we found that it's really helpful that they're able to manage one username, one password, and it controls, everything that they do. And so, that has enhanced the end user experience as well.
Well, even though we love doing a ton of work for you, one of your other key issues was the fact that every time you had to do a little change, you had to call my team up to do the change. And now that you're using Creatio with all their business processes, workflows, low code, how has that been a game changer for you?
So it's been a huge game changer. And yes, Sam, we do love your team. And we do still pick their brains, at times, but really it's come down to that, right? It's we're picking their brains. We're not really having to have them do the development work for us. So I said earlier, we just started using the service component of Creatio. So with that being low code, we were able to really get it up and running very quickly. How we're using it is where we have an outside portal where our customers log into the portal, and we're using the service component to create cases. It ties everything together, and you look at that low code that it gave us quickly the ability to implement emails that are triggered out to our clients. It has given us the ability to take those cases internally and have our own team be alerted whenever they own, a case has been assigned to them or there's something that they need to do. Plus, tying everything together gives our sales reps the opportunity to see what's going on with their particular client that we're helping. So, that low code, just that one little change that we were able to do over the last month has been a game changer. It's not also getting on someone else's schedule, right? And when can you fit us in? We can turn things around and bring things to life a lot faster than historically we would have been able to do. And the cost, right? The cost associated with that. We're not, dipping into our budget, using hours and things like that from a development perspective, because we're just paying our own employees to do it in-house.
And does that really, give you the ability to add more employees, from a budget perspective and things like that? Does that help there?
Well, yeah. So we have employees now that just their sole focus is to kind of build out Creatio for us, but it's a lower cost employee as well. We don't have to rely on an IT employee or someone that is really great in writing SQL and all the languages that you need to have in development. We're able to do that ourselves with a lower cost employee, which has enabled us to make more changes and get things up and running pretty quickly. So it's been a win-win for us for sure.
Yep. Well, we also know one of the big problems you had was upgrades and downtimes with the other CRM, as we'll call it. There was always a issue because they did not include automated updates. And we would have to schedule at least once a year a period where we were doing an upgrade for you, which obviously cost you money. And then you had to go through and do testing. And then we had to cut you over to the new system, and there was always a disruption. So we know with Creatio, the upgrades happen automatically and they actually happen more frequently. So how has this sort of affected your team's productivity and stability of your CRM experience?
Well, and that's a great point, Sam, because the upgrade process is really seamless from our standpoint. We're upgrading for, a bug fix or there's an enhancement to the product, and it happens really frequently. It's not something we're sitting around waiting and saying, okay, do we need to make this upgrade? And we're hesitant about it because we're going to have that downtime and there's going to be a cost associated. And is it really fixing things? We don't have those worries or concerns anymore. Our end users normally don't even realize that the system's been upgraded unless it's that there's a new feature or a new benefit that we're training them on. And then from a development standpoint, it's just refreshing to know that we're in a tool that continues to evolve rapidly. And so those upgrades are happening and, really behind the scenes without anybody losing sleep over it and being concerned that, oh, something's going to break. It just doesn't happen like that anymore. So it's been a really big benefit for us.
And I know the other big challenge you had was in marketing, because the emails for the other system, they really didn't have a marketing module, nor did they have a mechanism of sending bulk emails. So emails were always coming through your own server. and it always risked you of being blackballed and blacklisted rather, and marked as a spammer. So how has Creatio marketing been a game changer for you since you've implemented it?
So it's been a huge win for us. Bulk email has enabled us to make outreach to our current prescribers and their offices so much more timely than historically, where we had to have all of our sales reps individually doing emails and using Outlook to send an email. And it's totally a game changer. So, we are able to set up a marketing campaign, and our outreach time to our clients has been, I'd say, cut in at least half the time that it takes for us to get a message out to our prescriber offices. In addition to that, having the statistics to show the click-throughs and who opens our emails, really it helps our sales reps to be better educated when they're engaging with their prescriber offices. They have a better understanding of what their clients have seen before they even get in there and they start having a conversation, because they're able to say, hey, they've opened this email. We know, what they are aware of, if there's a change that's taken place, or we have access to a new drug that's come through the marketplace. It just gives them a lot more understanding. And it ensures that we're hitting all of our targets, right? So it's not just hit and miss. And, we're taking that out of our sales reps' hands. Marketing automation is simple. It's easy to set up the campaigns. And it really has worked very efficiently for us and helped us tremendously get the message out on who we are, what we're doing, and whatever the message is that we're trying to convey.
Yeah, we see this at a lot of our customers, that the marketing, what's really nice about it is marketing and sales now work together. They're not islands like they used to be, where you'd have salespeople doing one thing and marketing doing something completely different. And the combination of combining both of those systems has been really powerful for almost all our customers. And that's just a great win for everybody.
Yeah, and it helps you too, Sam, from having to invest in an outside product, right? Most of the other CRMs, you're investing in a secondary product to help you with that marketing automation and doing those campaigns. And this being built in just takes that out of the mix. And so again, from a cost perspective, it does definitely make a difference.
Well, and it simplifies it too, because all these other CRMs require you to actually integrate. So all you're doing is moving contacts back and forth between your marketing and your CRM solution, and having one system just makes it a lot easier for everybody and reduces the probability or chance of error at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So what advice would you give other pharmacy companies that are interested in trying low-code automation?
Yeah, so I would tell you to, really, it's not, was a simple solution for us. It made sense. It, took care of all of our needs. I would highly recommend it. Going to a low code that we are able to do a lot of the changes in house, not having a developer on staff, not having to outsource development dollars. It just has been really successful for us. And again, the speed of how quickly we're able to bring a change to life is enormous. Our industry changes, and anybody in the pharma world knows how quickly the industry changes and how often you're needing to tweak something, or there's a new rule or regulation that we need to make sure we're protecting our data. It just gives us so much more flexibility than what we had with our other systems. And this is my fourth different CRM, and throughout my career, and it's just been a really helpful tool for us to use. The cost savings again associated with it, it allows you to bring other resources on that can do other things to help your business to grow, versus having to spend all those resources, whether it's people resources or financial resources, on developing your CRM tool. So I would highly recommend it, and I think it, would definitely help anybody who was considering making the move over. It would be a good move.
Well, we have one question in the chat right now, and it is, does the pharma industry face any unique challenges?
So I think the pharma industry always faces unique challenges, and a lot of our the data that we have in the systems, we have to be very protective of that data to ensure that we're meeting all government regulations for CMS and things like that. And that's really the biggest thing is the security, right? The security of the system was enormous for us, and so this system takes care of that. Having that single sign-on, that integration with Active Directory, really handles all of that from that perspective.
Well, the great thing about any medical industry is that the regulations seem to change a lot, and you don't have a lot of lead time before you have to react to them. So I know low code makes that a little bit easier. We have another question in the chat. Did employees immediately accept the fact that were migrating from your old system to Creatio?
In our case, yes, and only because our old system was really a challenge for us and for our team. So in that case, absolutely. It's a really fairly simple system to use. It's easy to customize to make it work for your team. And so I think that was a big part of how we even designed it. We brought some of our end users into the process of designing the system before we made the switch to ensure that we were really meeting the needs of all of our users. And, they appreciated that, knowing that we were coming at this from a sales perspective, since they're our biggest users of the CRM. And so having their thoughts and feedback in the development stage was really helpful to us, and helped to, drive user engagement, because they were then another voice speaking for, hey, look at this is a great new tool. But again, we were in a really challenging to use CRM for sure, and so this made a difference.
Well, Terry, I just want to thank you for joining me and Creatio and doing this little interview. I think it's really important for other companies to hear about successful organizations that are using CRM.
Well, thanks, Sam, and I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today on Creatio and how useful it really has become for us.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Well, that was a very interesting session, and it's always great to hear the success that our customers have with Creatio. So thanks again to Sam and Terry for sharing that. And I am also extremely excited to now host the discussion with Jeff Turner from our incredible customer, Vitaconal. Jeff, welcome to the session.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Thank you.
So, Jeff, the previous session was, focused around how Creatio was helping Onco360 achieve their goals and overcome some of their challenges. And this session is all going to be focused on your success. So let me probably stop sharing my screen so we can have a little bit more of a face-to-face discussion, right? This is a lot better, of course. And Jeff, let's get started, right? So my first question is going to be pretty simple, right? Well, it is a simple question, but it's a very difficult topic. So Vitaconal is obviously driven to innovate, right? You're innovating your company products and as well technology that supports this incredible business growth. So the question goes, what is actually helping you to maintain and keep this innovation mindset in business?
Yeah, so good question. I think the key characteristic of vetiquinol that just keeps us wanting to innovate is the fact that we're growing both on a global level and here in the U.S. subsidiary of vetiquinol. We've got a very aggressive growth goal. First, this year and for our next 5 years, we're actually releasing quite a few new products. We released 4 new products this year, and so we've got kind of a built-in desire for growth, both in depth and breadth, and I think that is greatly maintained both by the corporate culture, but also by our digital transformation over the past few years has, I think, opened up a lot of eyes across the company to what we could be capable of and how technology can actually help us both achieve and sustain the growth that we want. We're in an industry, the animal health industry, that is not typically on the cutting edge of technology, and so I'd say that we've experienced a very significant and very successful shift to digital transformation mindset and embracing technology over the past few years. And as more and more people across the company realize what technology can unlock for us and how it can drive growth, it really helps keep people inspired and very actively focused on the growth that we want to achieve. So.
All right. Perfect. And you mentioned a few things about technology, right? So of course, no code is a huge trend, right? In 2021 and 2020, when it started kind of more and more emerging. So first of all, can you share a little bit of experience of what low code and no code technologies allowed you to achieve? And also a little bit from the perspective of how your strategy and your innovation strategy as well kind of shifted a little bit or maybe a lot with having access to no code technology of Creatio.
Sure. Yeah, I think that the having access to that kind of technology helps us, again, maintain that aggressive growth attitude, because the realization that people get as we shift to that kind of mindset, or the digital transformation mindset, is that there's a lot of truth in the concept that technology, particularly things like no code and low code technology, enable us to work smarter rather than harder. The traditional mindset in a non-technology industry is that when you grow, you just add more people, right? We just take the brute force method and hire more salespeople, hire more marketing people, hire more people to do everything. But when we really embrace something like Creatio's low code or no code platform, we're able to unlock a lot more capability with the same people that we already have, where we can really focus on 2 things. The first one is using that technology enables us to make one person seem like 2 or 5 or 10. That's a real key, especially when we're talking about efficiency of cost. We want both our salespeople out in the field, but also the folks that are working internally on marketing and promotional and key account management, and of course all of our data folks. We want to be able to get the most out of each of those people's capability without either making people work 80-hour weeks or deciding that we need to hire 2 or 3 more people for everything. So that's the first key, I think, to that unlocking the capability that low code and no code technology affords us. And the second one is really focused out, particularly on the field, but also with our marketing efforts. One of the things that the technology really helps us with is enabling really precise targeting of high value work rather than trying everything and hoping that we get an ROI. And Creatio is a big part of that. The data that we track now regarding both our sales and marketing activity and other related activities enables us to really really apply some data science and good analytics to recognizing what's provided ROI and what has not. And also, in a very tactical sense, really identify where are the high priority targets for our sales force to spend their time. There's no salesperson in the world that can visit every single account in their territory, on a monthly or biannually or annual basis. Typically you don't want territories that are so small that a salesperson can be everywhere all the time. So it's really important to identify where should the salesperson be spending the time, and what should they be doing with their time when they're visiting that account. And both the data that we collect and track through Creatio, and then the ability for us to modify Creatio to meet some of our different business concerns really helps us zero in on being precise and strategic with our tactical choices. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you would allow me, I'm going to use you as a quote when you said that you have 10 people in one with low code and no code technologies, because this is incredible. I got to say, this is just great. So going back to the digital transformation, right? So it's definitely not a destination, it's a journey, right? And it's always ongoing. And Talk&All have been through their digital transformation for 3 years now, right? Well, about 3 years. So could you share a little bit of your experience specifically in how do you maintain this strategy to continuously transform the company and go through this digital transformation? Because like any process, right, it's a little bit tiresome in some cases, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of companies, they actually drop it because they're unsuccessful or, because they think that they've reached it. So how do you continuously develop and maintain this digital transformation strategy?
Yeah, so I think one of the most important things about, especially in regard to maintaining the strategy, is that when we really focus on our digital transformation, it really makes us focus again and revisit our overall business model. And one of the best things about the digital transformation is that as we implement tools like Creatio, it really behooves us to focus on what is the common information language that we're using in this tool and across our other tools, our non-CRM tools, and therefore in the business practice day to day. I think that in a way, this actually keeps people invigorated and embracing the transformation, because when you get everybody speaking the same language, from data through information through the business model, it gets rid of a lot of negative distractions. You're not constantly trying to figure out what did this person mean, or do we have a different perspective on results because we're simply not talking about the same thing, or we're comparing apples to oranges. So I think that as we implement digital tools like Creatio, it really forces that common language that helps to keep the change seem very positive rather than negative. And then, of course, the other thing that is a huge contributor is that, quite simply, people can see the results. There are a lot of people here in Vetiquinol, USA, who recognize, who can tell you very quickly that since we implemented Creatio and since we really committed to a digital transformation and having a technology mindset, our business has improved in specific, tangible, recognizable ways. And when people can see that, and when they can see it really quickly after we embark on the journey or start the transformation, it keeps them really eager for more. Every small piece of success that we have makes people think about, well, what else could we do, and what and how quickly can we do it? That might be the good problem to have that comes out of a successful digital transformation like this, is that it makes people want more constantly.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And this is also kind of another part to what I wanted to ask. You mentioned that you are continuously and kind of going back to your business model, and you're reviewing your business model. Have you as well kind of thought about maybe introducing additional, channels of sales, or maybe introducing a new business model to the Talk&All? And how fast do you think Local can support in implementing and introducing a new business model for the Talk&All?
Yeah, absolutely. I think once again, just like I mentioned earlier, when people see what kind of technical capability we have through tools like Creatio, and what how that can influence our success or enable even just new possibilities for how we do business, they start thinking naturally about, well, how could the business change? And this is a really positive thing. There are certainly times in any business when you think, this might be a good idea, but I just don't know how we do it. And I think that Creatio is one of our key tools that gets us past the conversation of could we do it, and makes people feel confident that we could. Largely because people have seen so many examples of how we're able to adapt on the fly to a need, and the low code and no code adaptability of Creatio is a huge part of that. I think back to 20 years ago, before I was working at Vetiquinol, I was working at a company that made donor management software, and this was what I'll now call the traditional software model, right? I don't want to call it the old way because I don't feel like I was around for anything that's old now, but we'll call it traditional. And in that traditional model, if we wanted to make a change to the front end, even something, I could give you a really concrete example. I remember being the technical person to help with a sales call to a potential client in Canada. And one of the really basic questions that came up was, can you handle Canadian physical mailing address formats? and the answer at the time was no, the software doesn't do that. The mailing addresses in the software are designed around the US format. And to make that relatively simple change required first the backend database specialist for the development team to make their change, go through the whole dev process, test it out, check out that this didn't cause any problems anywhere else in the software. And then the front end developer could get involved and make the change, add the right fields to the UI and so forth. I mean, this was a 3 to 6 week task, and if it was really highly prioritized as a must have now, it would have been maybe a 1 or 2 week task, drop everything else, right? But that's an intense amount of labor for a really simple change. Fast forward 20 years here, and we had a scenario here at Vetiquinol where we wanted to make a change to the UI for our email marketing campaigns. We have many accounts that have multiple contacts, and we've got plenty of different algorithms and business processes for choosing a contact at an account when we want to send just a single copy of an email to that account for a marketing campaign. But we decided that one of the things we wanted to add was the ability for one of our sales reps to go into the account and say, this particular contact is the high priority contact for this marketing campaign, for this subject. And it took us all of an hour to affect that change in Creatio, to actually put some fields in there for the sales team to be able to go in and mark who that high priority contact should be. And honestly, the only reason that it took us an hour was that probably 30 minutes of it or so were spent on discussing exactly how would we want to do it, not how do we do it technically, but what's the exact user experience that we want. And I remember looking back at that and thinking back to the scenario at the company 2 decades ago, that, man, if we had tried to do this there, we probably just wouldn't have done it, because it would have required so much time. The marketing campaign would have come and gone before the tool change could have been made. So I think that, to me, that's one of my favorite examples of how the concept of no code and low code platform management really just enables business. Nobody's ever asking, can we do it? Well, when they ask, can we do it, what they're really asking is do you have enough time around all the other things we've asked you to do, because we realize that we can do so much here. So
hashtag accelerate, definitely, because, and again, great story. So another question, and this is also actually coming from the chat. So based on your amazing experience and success, Where would you suggest organizations that in the beginning of the journey start when they're thinking about digitalizing their workflows and going through the transformation?
Yeah, so I actually wrote down three things earlier when I was trying to think about what would I recommend to people that are just getting started at this. Now that Vetiquinol USA has been using Creatio for almost 3 years, and many of our other subsidiaries have been starting up in waves. So I always think about what would I tell the subsidiaries that are just starting now. The first thing that came to mind was give a lot of thought to your information model and your business model. Okay, and this is a really key thing, and again, for those of us that are old enough to remember more traditional software, the reason I think this is so important is that honestly, in the past, you would have to look at at any given software application and say, will this work? Can I make my business model fit what this software does, right? So I think that when you're getting ready to start with a digital transformation in general, and a tool like Creatio in particular, it's a great thing to be able to think about, what does my business model look like, and how do I want the tool to adapt to fit my business model? Because the tool will adapt to fit your business model, and that probably seems like a no-brainer to somebody who's a little bit newer to the digital world, but for those of us that have been around a little longer, it's a complete paradigm shift. The second thing is, I encourage people to think in terms of small incremental changes, and the reason why is that again, looking at older models, at non-low code or non-no code models, you really had to bundle the changes that you wanted into big packages, because you had to commit to an agile sprint cycle, right? And you had to, as long as the developers in here making this change, it makes sense to have them make 5 more changes at the same time. So it's always big development. Well, now we can decide today that we want to do one thing, and we can decide tomorrow that we want to add another change, and on Thursday we can do another change. So you don't have to architect the entire platform to meet this year's strategic goals. You could be changing it on the fly. So get in the habit of thinking of the small incremental changes and deciding what would have the most impact on my business now by doing that. And then the third thing that I've been telling all of our subsidiaries who are getting ready to launch Creatio is, plan for more time than you would expect for development work, which at first sounds like a negative, but it's actually not. I don't make that recommendation because the development is hard. I make that recommendation because the development is easy, and once again, when people discover that you can adapt the platform to do what you need it to do, all of a sudden the doors are all open to them. Your other departments, the marketing department, the sales department, the customer management department, they all realize, oh my gosh, we can actually make the tool do what we need it to. And it's amazing when you have that realization, how many things you come up with that you would like to actually have the tool do. So once people realize you have the capability to make business impactful changes, they will find business impactful changes that they want. So I tell people, plan to spend more time doing that than you thought, not because it's hard, but because it's easy. No.
Absolutely. Jeff, I would love to carry on with this interview, but unfortunately we're out of time.
Okay.
Thank you again for your time. Thank you for sharing your success and your incredible story of the journey that Vetiquinol was going through and is still going through and will be, right?
Yep, definitely. We're looking forward to, we see success every day, and we're looking forward to a whole lot more of it. So thanks for the support, and thanks for having me on to discuss with you.
Absolutely. Jeff, thanks again. And I hope to see you very soon again.
Definitely. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Well, that was a very interesting story, and the information around the digital transformation of Vitacanol. And we're gonna close up this day with a digital circle with our amazing guest speakers, John Kim and Eric Lazenby, Raghu, David Lasher. Welcome back to the sessions, and myself as well. So the digital circle is going to be around how marketing and sales are now different in life sciences, and if no-code technologies can actually help us. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining the session with me. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen so I can all see you. And welcome to the circle. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us.
All right, perfect. So, just to kick this conversation off, let's probably start with a simple question, right? And anyone who feels eager to start, please jump in. So first of all, what we'd like to know is what is actually the biggest change in the commercial operations in life sciences that happened due to the pandemic, right? And how do you see companies react to these changes?
John, do you want to take that? I'll defer to John because he's actually, he's senior executive in the industry, seeing everything, responding to the changes. So let's hear from John first.
Yeah, thanks for that, David, and Alex. Thanks for having us this morning. I think the two biggest things are certainly a significant shift in how information is being delivered. So making sure, it's always been the goal to make sure it's relevant, insightful, and informative. But I think now it's just the medium in which it's being delivered. So certainly a big shift to digital. I think that's the first piece that shouldn't catch anyone by surprise. But I think the second one is agility. Anyone who's worked in commercial operations understands there's a number of moving parts. And in order to make sure that information is not only relevant and informative, it has to be timely. And that requires an enormous amount of agility, both in terms of the data sets, the operations, and ultimately the ability to execute. And just as we've seen from other industries about this kind of shift towards real-time and relevant information, I think you've seen within the life sciences industry over the last 18 months an incredible job of not only making that transformative shift towards digital delivery, but also then doing it in a way in which it's complementing the field sales efforts, because at the end of the day, it's a complementary approach that ultimately delivers the best overall outcomes for not only companies but also for the healthcare system and for patients. So to me, the two biggest things are certainly digital and agility. And so when you kind of relate that back to what we'll talk about today, I think the more agile the back-end operations can be, the more efficient and the more effective that we can actually deliver information and ultimately make an impact for everyone involved.
Interesting. And Raghu, since you're coming from a little bit of a different side of the table, right? Can you share a little bit of your experience? What does CCS see as the biggest change in the commercial operations?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. See, from our side, right? Even we work with industry from both the sides. So we need to categorize and understand this entire commercial ecosystem into maybe stakeholder wise, right? What HCPs are really looking for, or what physicians are really looking for, what sales and marketing guys are looking for, and what payers are doing, how this patient centricity is evolving, right? So the patient centricity has made everything relook, right? Entire the commercial operation has been changed. How we deal with the patient, how we talk to a patient, engage a patient, and vis-a-vis how we engage a HCP, how we personalize the content to them, right? Everything. Because see, if you see, there is a new coin or a new phenomena has arrived, is a boundaryless territories, right? A sales guy sitting in India can talk to a person virtually anywhere in the globe, or from US they can talk or attend any conference or events, right? That has changed completely. And the reason is before it was X percentage of digital adoption. Now we have seen 10x kind of digital adoption across the commercial value chain, and everybody are accepting the change and sitting in front of the computers listening to what new things are happening. Now they are everybody are giving time. This is mostly on a positive side, but obviously on other side we see little in-person contact has come down and those things. But the digital adoption has grown up, and everywhere, like what physicians are looking for a XR kind of events, conferences, mixed reality, virtual reality conferences, how I enter a booth, because we were working with one of the pharma company on how we enter a booth and what kind of therapies they look for, what information, and subsequently how the patient can be treated. So everything is changed. So I'll stop here, Alex, and
Thanks, Raghu. Eric, can you share something with us?
Absolutely. Thank you. So my history, I have a 20-year history as a field sales rep in big pharma, followed by now near 3 years in medical device as an independent sales rep. So that means I'm commission only. So I can offer it. During my time in big pharma, I called on hospitals and doctors' offices. So I can offer kind of a perspective from both from pharma and from medical device in doctors' offices and also in hospitals. And I think that some of the biggest changes that I've seen and that my colleagues have seen and friends of mine that are in pharma have seen, number one is the most obvious would be the complete shutdown of access to doctors. And that was a big deal. And then we asked a lot of our customers in a very short period of time in order to, let us engage with you virtually. Let us, open our emails. And my colleagues have complained that only 1 to 2%, maybe 3% of their emails actually get opened. That many times the email address that is shared is kind of the junk email address or the office email address. You're not getting the super secret email address of that goes straight to the doctor. And I think that in asking that ability to engage with them digitally, we also asked about we asked them to have technical knowledge and technical skill that many of them did not have. So my colleagues have been, explained to me that part of their skill set is now required to be technical knowledge, not only for the tools and services that they were presented with, but also to help their customers get connected. I can hear them, but they can't hear me. And I always solve that problem in order to make this happen. So then, in addition to that, as we've moved more towards a digital engagement of any kind, whether that's going to be direct marketing in Facebook, right? Or more likely in a virtual engagement like we're having now, that engagement is very different because it's more intentional. It's planned. It's much more intentional. So I think what a big change is that the demand for the audience, the doctors now, are demanding that engagement be relevant to them. When it was a physical engagement, I could go by the office, I could go by the hospital, I would catch as catch can, and maybe I would even know sometimes who I was going to see was walking through a hospital. And that engagement is friendly and it's haphazard, and I'll get a couple of points in on my product. But when it comes to virtual, you better be ready. You've got to have something that's right for that person, or they're just not going to re-engage with you. That's what
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Alex, let me test a hypothesis. Today kicked off with a presentation, a point of view that I shared, but there was a theory in it. And I'd like to hear John and Eric in particular, also Raghu, but John and Eric being in the industry respond, which is that it would seem that for med reps to be successful going forward, and this builds on what Eric was just saying, is that med reps need to be more like what my career has been, a consultant. It's more consultative sales. It's not just dropping off samples and push in pamphlets and information. It's engaging, being relevant, and asked back. What do you think about this hypothesis that the field force, the reps, whether in-house or contracted, right, independent like Eric, need to be enabled to engage in consultative sales in a way that is much different than it was 2 years ago? John?
Yeah, David, I couldn't agree more with that. As Eric was describing, you have to be ready and be right. You also be relevant. If you want some engagement, whether it's in person or virtual, the better informed you are, and the better information you have, the more of an impact that you can have in that conversation. And I think you really start to invite someone who's either face to face or over a computer screen to really want to engage with you and want to continue to engage with you. As we know, in the consultative space, it's very often you build that relationship over time, but you do it because you're a trusted subject matter expert. And the only other aspect I would say that I think is even more critical than what we're talking about here is it's one thing if it's an employee. It's another if it's a contracted sales relationship or contract sales organization. I think in that regard, you need it even more because you're trying to build up that relationship and build up that knowledge base in a much shorter period of time. But I think both situations are very applicable to what we're talking about here today.
Eric?
So the answer, yes, absolutely. If you're more of a consultative sales rep, I think that by definition it would mean that you're a good listener, and that you are taking in information that you're learning about a particular doctor, a particular group, a particular hospital, and then going to be able to figure out a way to best meet those needs. And I do think that that's where we talked about agility before, or was talked about. And I think that that's where, Creatio and your product, David, in Keen 360, particularly with the KLS product, can really shine, because the things that I've been hearing from customers has really been about flexibility, agility, speed to market. And as sales reps, when we're in that environment, there's a lot of information that can be gathered. For example, the doctor's managed care makeup. How much a particular pharmacy is being influenced, is influencing that person's that person's prescribing habits, what their contracting is like. And a lot of this stuff is not exactly evident online or in other avenues. You kind of have to be there and listen to the conversations and understand and so forth. And I think that there's an opportunity to not only be a consultative sales rep, but also to gather that information and pass to John, to people in headquarters, who then have the ability to use it and figure out a way to be a better service. I think in that consultative part of it, there also has to be mentioned the ever-present, completely oppressive regulatory and legal compliance part of this. The FDA, the OIG, the DOJ, everybody's, as a pharma company, as a medical device company, you've got to be extremely careful to ensure that you're not stepping on or getting close to any sort of laws. And I can say that in my career, we've come up with some great ideas, what you call these no-brainer ideas, and everybody gets excited, and we send it over to legal, and it gets kabah, and it's like, nope, can't do that. But to your point and to your hypothesis, I think it is true, very much so, that we have to get better, not just closer to our customers, not just meeting them where they are, but meeting them where they are with what they need. And I think that's sort of a definition of helpful and consultative selling.
Yeah, so I completely agree, Eric, on that. To add to your points, right? So we have often seen these pharmaceutical companies are trying to reduce the sales guys' mundane work through might be a robotic automation process, or leveraging AI-led microservices areas, or any kind of automation, right, which a mundane kind of work can be taken care of, so that the sales guy actually puts his complete focus on understanding more from a product perspective or a research update perspective, where they can pass it on to particular physicians or doctors. That's one. And also the trainings or the focus are happening on how to leverage these applications, or how to leverage a social CRM, or how to engage a physician through multi-channel marketing activities by sales rep. This focus, right? So it need not be one channel where a sales guy always focuses and adheres to give information to these doctors, but he's a single point of contact for him, as well as the physician, as well as the organization. So the thin line between marketing and sales guys is also coming up. where these campaigns or a social CRM, connected CRM. So everything is built, means everything can be taken care by sales guy himself to large extent, and pass it on to the, if needed, the sales guy will pass it on to the subsequent next level. So that entire omni-channel kind of connect, right? That is one. Reducing or focusing on core activities of the sales guys, like how to take care of these travel expenses by RPA kind of scenario, right? How to take his route planning, territory management, updating sales guy master data, right? So these things are taken care. And also suppose a sample requirement or particular kind of campaign information, a chatbot, a virtual sales assistant will address those things for HCP, and where the sales guy actually focuses on a second level or a more matured kind of communications. That's what we are seeing, and we have seen major implementations are going on, big digital transformations are going on these areas. And also there is a trend, right, which we have seen in large Europe and US pharma and even Japanese pharma as well. They are building a global unified contact centers using chatbots, right? And it looks like a one sales guy taking care of multiple mundane kind of queries across globe, addressing HCP and leaving large amount of focused, dedicated, and good time for a sales guy to manage their physicians. Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting thoughts, gentlemen, to be honest. So, David, do you want to also kind of get the ball rolling here?
I have a question I want to pose to John and Eric. I've been looking forward to this because it's a little like a boxing ring, okay? And the tension here and the fight it's classic, and I want to hear whether John and Eric see anything changing in this classic tension. And the tension is between that which the home office is looking for and wants and decides to fund, right, IT or otherwise, trying to enable the field force, which is what Eric represented, right, and represents. But the field force has never classically been very satisfied, shall I say, with what gets rolled out by home office, right? I mean, home office is trying, but the field force has typically needed something more flexible than what they receive. And before I turn it over to hear the home office versus field kind of perspectives, the question is, where can we get going forward with more agile platforms like you can get with no code, right? Is there a chance to reduce this classic tension and do things like, for example, instead of having the field force dominate what's in the CRM platform, I'm just going to use that for shorthand, allowing a team like key accounts or the medical liaisons to have CRM solutions that on one platform support all these different teams, right? And maybe bring them together for more collaborative consultative sales. So let's open up the boxing ring and hear how the field and home office feels about that classic tension and maybe opportunities going forward. John, home office, do you want to start?
Yeah, certainly. I think it is a collaborative approach. I think that ultimately yields the best outcomes. If I think about any of the discussions I've been involved with around the promotional review process, clear through to interacting with the field. The best discussions start and end with not only the patient but then the provider in mind, making sure that you can get the right information out there. And so, David, I think the key here is making sure you do it in not only a compliant way, but that you've got the agility in the back office, if you will, to enforce the compliance and to make sure it's being done properly. But I do think there's many ways to innovate in order to ensure that we are continuing to provide the best information. But in my experience, having done this quite a bit across hundreds of colleagues in the field, it really is a collaborative approach. And to me, one of the biggest things we did, both currently and in the past, is to make sure we've got great field engagement and that we're constantly communicating. I think the best commercial operations teams are the ones that continue to focus on the home office, but are out in the field. They're doing the ride-alongs, they're attending the sales meetings, etc. And the reason I feel that way is that's where the dialogue occurs. The last thing we want to do is roll something out that we think is great, and ultimately it causes field sales team members or folks, if you will, like Eric, a lot more headaches, and then and vice versa. I think that's the key to success is that collaboration. But Eric, I'm curious, from your perspective, what you've seen as well.
Sure, I think it definitely is a collaborative effort. And in my experience, I'm thinking about a 20-year span now. I saw more and less collaboration over the course of my experience. And most of the collaboration will be done pertaining to sales techniques and sales strategy in what are a subsection of sales ops called disease management team. And some disease management teams are better than others in terms of understanding the customer and what that presentation flow should be like. Over the course of my career, I think that big pharma, in my case, became much more understanding of that necessary collaborative effort. And I can tell you that I don't feel like it was a real, and from a sales strategy, it was really never that bad in terms of the boxing match that you're describing. I think it might have been more in the area that came out, things that would come out of sales ops that were time consuming and sort of check the box types of activities that really didn't add to putting numbers on the bottom line. And I think those types of things could be somewhat frustrating to a lot of sales reps. What surprises me was how little interaction sometimes people in sales ops or even on disease management teams and the people, the support staff and all the group that surround them. What does surprise me is how little actually interaction they get with sales reps. And what I found was the people who are, you think that sales ops is really over sales ops, but there are a few sections and people sort of in their way that are very protective of the field force. They're protective of the field force time. They're protective of, they don't want marketing calling them every 5 minutes and asking them questions and, all of this. They want to keep that to a minimum. And then sometimes it does affect the outcomes of what we're offered. But by and large, I believe that companies have become much more engaging with departments have become much more engaging with each other, understand that the work product has got to hit right. And I did notice that, in pharma career and now in medical device as an independent rep, those companies have more interest in what I have to offer than ever before because they tend to be smaller, more innovative companies. And to your point earlier, that flexibility, the agility, the speed to market, the ability to make changes to your system quickly is right where Creatio and in particular, I think Team 360 fits. That's what I've seen so far.
Rega, you seen anything in the home office and the field?
Yeah. So the other side of the coin, right? So we got engagement on various maybe change management kind of scenarios, or how to enhance the virtual offices of a sales guys and marketing guys, leveraging various tools, technologies. So that's one area. And also the change management, right? So training them, making them comfortable of leveraging these solutions, applications are very, very, very important, because unless until that is been done, the usage can't be put in the practice, right? So that's an area as well. We have also seen and how to make a sales guy, right, center of all campaigns, marketing, patient centricity, right? So companies are looking at that kind of scenario. They have probably identified the problem, which I think Eric was also trying to mention, and they are working towards to have an integrated CRM, right, kind of scenario, where that person will become a CEO of that territory, right? Probably all channels, marketing will be driven through this particular sales guy or a medical MSLs or key account managers, right? So that's happening. And the tools and technologies like Creatio would definitely helping those kind of scenarios.
What about another classic problem or challenge, which is moving from clinical to commercial, right? For an established company, of course, it might be a new drug that's being released, right? And need to get it out to the targeted market. And of course, for a startup, and I was having a conversation less than 24 hours ago with a startup that's aiming to go IPO this spring, February, March, and they're beginning to figure out, how they're confident of where they are in the FDA approval cycle, so they're beginning to talk about how do we launch our commercial team. John and Eric, in particular, again, like that transition from clinical to commercial, that's always been a challenge. Has it been changed? What's most needed that you're seeing these days?
David, I think that the key there is speed, right? As those activities, kind of take shape, and things can obviously you want to make sure you have the appropriate time to plan and execute. But the key to me there is making sure you've got speed, as we talked about earlier, just the agility. But it's also the capabilities, right? And especially as a small organization, we don't have an enormous amount of infrastructure or capabilities, but we still have the same requirements and needs as a big company. And so when you look at having off-the-shelf solutions that have not only the right capabilities built in, but require as little level of expertise, whether it's from a coding perspective or just from an overall operational standpoint, to me, that's the key. Is to be able to get something off the shelf. It's pre-configured. I can plug it in. I know what data sets it works with. I've got great consulting partners that I can leverage, because ultimately my core competency should be the science and the ultimately the benefits that we're bringing to market. It shouldn't necessarily be that we're technological experts, but kind of to round it out, to me, it very much is that off-the-shelf plug-and-play capability, and requires as little coding, as little technological capabilities, and then having a great set of partners who can come in and help you lay the pavement to ultimately roll those systems out and commercialize the product.
Eric, field perspective?
Okay. Yeah, that was excellent. It's so interesting when the headquarter guys talk. They sound like headquarter guys for sure. So forgive me, but I'm just so impressive. You just, wow. So in terms of product launch, I did many launches, and so from a field perspective, I could say that sometimes there's an assumption of clinical knowledge. If you're going to launch a product, you've just got to make sure that two things happen. You've got to make sure that your sales reps, your field force, understands how to use the tools that they've been given, backwards and forwards. So onboarding, very, very important. And then there needs to be an absolute commitment to clinical knowledge. When you get in front of a doctor for the first time to explain a product for the first time, you must be ready. And that means you've dedicated yourself to understanding your product backwards and forwards. So, and I think that technology can play a role in that, with different testing and quizzes to make it fun. I think that as you launch a product, and this is kind of to John's point, there never seemed to be enough time or enough data. And I think that with the flexibility that John is describing, there might be an opportunity to provide more information and more data. For example, managed care makeup and even different pieces of data for different parts of the country that have some patient populations and access and so forth. So I think that to answer your question, I think that a commitment to clinical knowledge is critical, and then just the ability that the sales rep has to utilize the tools that they've been given in a launch environment.
Raghu, any perspective on that, clinical to commercial? What are you seeing from your business and your part of the world?
Yeah, so it's a interesting journey, David, on that. because previously it was a little, I would not say it was a difficult task.
I think we might be experiencing some technical issues here.
Alex, do we have some connectivity issues? All right.
Yeah, looks like it.
All right. While the internet bounces back, we have just a couple minutes. People versus tools.
Maybe.
Raghu, I think we're having trouble on our end, so I'm going to pose another question to John and Eric, and it's kind of a people versus tools kind of question. I'm relatively new to the life sciences industry, and what's manufacturing was most of my background, my early background. And so what was interesting to me was learning this word detailing, right? And detailing, for those not in the industry, means giving a presentation. That's what it really means in layman's terms. And it seems like there was a real heavy focus on having the right detailing tools and knowing exactly what slide was presented to providers and how many seconds did everybody spend on this slide versus that slide. And I don't think that's, and it seems to me that was over focus on tools and overly much faith in what that data from the presentations, from the detailing was telling you. Do you think, in detailing in particular, do you think maybe the pendulum swung too far? Do you think it's a little different right now? And I'm saying, and like, how much of success of a life sciences company and its field force, how much of it is tools and how much of it is people? So that's a pretty big question, but John?
Yeah, I'll kind of start, and then Eric, I'd love your insight on this as well, because I think I can certainly provide the headquarters view in terms of that. But ultimately, I think, Eric, the time you've spent out in the field will complement kind of what I'll provide as well. David, here's what I think. I think you can have all the technology in the world. I think you can over or under analyze any problem. To me, you have to be able to have the right tools in place, but just as much as the tools, right, and the technology, it does come down to having the right strategy and the right people. And so I see it as a complement, it's a complementary approach. But the on the analysis piece, I've seen things that have just been way overanalyzed. And yeah, it's great, but ultimately you have to decide when to decide to make a decision and make sure that you have the right KPIs. And when I say right, it's not about volume. It's not about volume. It's not about variety. It's about having literally the right ones. And as I've seen on that point, it is organizationally about getting the right people focused on those things and not getting lost in the details, or this probably may sound a little cliche, being able to see the forest through the trees. And so I think for me, it's a balancing act. You absolutely have to have the right tools. I think that's just the only way. And I think field sales teams demand that, internal teams demand it. But I think from an analytics perspective, make sure you have the right people. Ultimately, the insights that you get, combined with great tools and the ability to execute that, will lead to what I've seen as the best outcomes. I think you can have you can way over balance or overcorrect, if you will, on people. You can do the same thing on technology. But to me, if you've got the right tools and combined with the right people, ultimately you'll be able to execute that. But that's just kind of my perspective on the tools and the technology. Eric, I know you've been involved in a number of launches. I'd be curious where you saw, whether it's launches or just day to day, where you saw the best tools and the best insights lead to the best outcomes.
Wow. So I do have a fair amount to share with this. Over the course of my career, when I first started, we would have paper detail pieces. They would come, maybe you get 30, 35 pages, front and back color. They were 3-hole punched. This is a long time ago. Okay. They were 3-hole punched. And we would sit in a room and everybody would actually come up with their own detail. We would slide them into the, the clear paper sliders, and we'd flip them back and forth. And sometimes you'd use 2 or 3 because you wanted to emphasize a point. It was really up to you and the way you thought the presentation should go. And I think there's some regulatory issues with that probably came up. That's usually the motivation for almost everything in pharma anyway, from my experience. And then the computers came out. And you're right, David, there was a lot of emphasis on using the iPad. You always use the iPad. From the field force perspective, there were a lot of rumors going around about how they're tracking us with the iPad. And, people were going through and making presentations with the iPad that weren't even real. And it was terrible because I think that headquarters, and this didn't happen just in one company, but it happened across the board because every company talks to each other. And that data, I think that, that John might be referring to as you go, well, how did you make, 45 presentations in one day? And, a lot of these things were utilized in many cases because, the word comes down. Headquarters says this, regional manager says this, manager says this, and you will do this or else. And when you put people in that arrangement, you're going to get whatever they think you want. And I think, unfortunately, when it comes down to the technology, there might be a lot of tracking that's going on that might be misleading people because they've received this amount of utilization and all that may not exactly be accurate. And I'm being honest with you. Who knows how many people I'm being honest with now. But the truth is, I just, for the benefit of everybody on this call and here, I think you have to really have that collaborative relationship with your field force to ensure that they're not just telling you what you want to hear in order to get through the day and make their number and so forth. I hope that answers some of your question. It comes down to your people, but it comes down to the collaboration. And I think that in the systems that I was using, it was a very top-down approach. And there was not a lot of upward feedback to say whether or not this was really going to be good and utilized. And finally, now in this new environment, it cannot be overemphasized that the tools that are given, and particularly in a sales presentation, they've got to be really relevant, to that doctor. And this is an easy thing to say, but a challenging thing to do. Because I think that, even when you're physically there with a doctor and in their office, or this doctor, who they see, their patient profiles, when they work, a lot about these people, it's still sometimes a challenge to ensure that the 3 or 4 minutes that you're going to get to spend with this person is really relevant for them. And what are we talking about? Are we talking about, is it dosing now that is important to you? Is it drug-drug interaction that's important to you today? Is it managed care coverage that's important to you today? What is it? And there are probably 6 or 7, 8 different variables that you can run with around, around a particular product. And my point is that with the technology, there has to continue to be this back and forth and this ability to implement change in order to ensure that the field force is getting what they need and that they're also able to communicate that to the doctors effectively. As we go towards I'm running on here, but as we go towards a virtual engagement, I think we're all in love with this technology. I am too. But I do see a challenge in getting our customers to really adopt this technology, to really engage with it, and to say that, what, I'd rather have a virtual engagement with a rep than a physical engagement. As we get back into the field, in order to prepare for this, I did reach out. I spoke to a number of people that I know across different companies that are in pharma. And as we get back into the field, more doctors are saying, just come see me, as opposed to schedule an appointment through my office, the person who answers the phone, and then get them to talk with the office manager to approve it, and then get the medical assistant to look at the schedule and determine whether or not there is time that particular day, and then get the doctor's commitment to be there at a particular time,
Hey, Eric.
and so forth.
Yep.
Sorry.
We're at our time limit, Alex, I think.
Yes, unfortunately, we are.
Sorry,
yeah. I want to hear one. I've got, because Eric and John both brought it up in 10 seconds each at most, or especially for John. What I just heard you talking about was KPIs, and you get what you measure. classically in this industry, it's been attainment, reach, and frequency. Is that still the right metric? Are you looking for new metrics, John, in particular, from home office?
Yeah, I think we're looking for new metrics. Reach and frequency are important depending on the phase of the launch. If you're trying to get awareness out there in the asset, but absolutely, depending on the phase of the asset and the treatment type and therapeutic area, we're always on the search for new metrics. And I think it's about finding the right metric for the right phase of the asset and the launch.
So reach and frequency plus, reach, frequency, outcome. Are we getting anywhere? And how often does this doctor really need to be seen? A lot of times the reach and frequency is decided on the doctor's ability to write more or less of the product. And that may or may not be the right number. It might be reach, frequency. What is our outcome? What are we actually accomplishing?
All right, perfect. Gentlemen, again, I would love to continue this conversation, but unfortunately we're out of time. And thank you so much for participating in the digital circle. Ergo, sorry you had a little bit of a technical issue there, and we couldn't hear more from you. But we are all very excited of having you here, and very much looking forward to seeing you in one of our next sessions.
Yeah,
Thanks very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, sir. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Well, what a day this was, huh? And again, thank you for everybody for staying with us throughout this day, through all of those sessions. We really hope that you enjoyed them as much as I did. And tomorrow, just a quick agenda, we're going to be spending a day in industry workflows for telecom. We're going to have 5 amazing sessions. Definitely something to consider participating in, and we're pretty sure that we're going to find a session that is going to be extremely interesting and impactful for you. Just to remind our audience about the biggest events in the history of the company, the Freedom Release that is scheduled to be hosted on the 8th of February. This date will not be changed. So definitely book it in your calendars, and we're going to be looking forward to hosting you there and presenting all of the biggest updates from Creatio, from the company, from the product, and for our community. Thank you all again so much for participating, and looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.